You know what? These jobs are a joke. Seriously, they are a joke, okay? They will put you through, corporate America, the corporate arena has really become the corporate circus at this point. Some of the situations and the scenarios that I actually share with you on my channel here are almost laughable. You have to laugh in order to keep your sanity intact, right? And it's just insane, the absurdities, right? Like, they have such unrealistic expectations. They have you jump through hoops with fire. They have you hurry up just to wait. They have you do all of these things, all of these extensive, unnecessary, almost unheard of, unethical seemingly practices for you to go through this hiring process, their so-called protocols, and then you do all of that just for them to ghost you, just for them to go with another candidate. So today in my episode, another episode of my Crazy Corporate Chronicles, I'm going to be sharing with you a story about a job that I had when I was in the workforce some years ago, where I was attempting to get a job with a company, a well-known company who still to this day is buying up the bar. And when I say that, I mean that they are acquiring and merging with other businesses, right? So they're one of those companies they're like a Fortune 500 company, and they are like the umbrella or mother company, if you will, for other companies that they've acquired, right? So they've gone through a merger process or acquisition process. And so you'll hear a name of a company, and then you'll say, and then you'll realize, that company is associated with or affiliated with the mother company. So if I were to say the name, you'd know it, but I'm not going to, okay? But there are a lot of companies like that. So I say all that to say they're big name companies. They're like companies we know, not little mom and pop shops, okay? I actually have not worked for a lot of little, small mom and pop shop type of companies. I've always, for the most part, worked for major corporations in the healthcare industry, okay? So in this particular instance, I went through a round of 5 interviews, okay, to include a presentation, just to find out in the end that I wasn't the selected candidate. How, Sway? Because the way I see it is, if a candidate makes it through even the second or at least by the 3rd round, the way it used to be once upon a time, you're in. You're just kind of going through the formalities, right? The logistics of it. You're meeting the people, right? You're interviewing, you might be in a panel interview, and then you might be, meeting the director of that department, and then you might be coming back to meet the employees. But, there is a reason for them doing that, right? It's just the formalities of it all. But it means, typically, in my experience, through all the years, 30 years that I was in corporate America, it's always been, if you make it that far in, you've got the job, okay? No, not this time. And this was the first time I've ever experienced anything like this, and I was livid. The disrespect of it all, the audacity, right? The nerve that you have to waste my precious time that I can't get back, right? To keep calling me in for interview after interview after interview, just to not even have the common decency in the end to let me know you went with another candidate, to then have me chase after you to find out what happened. Why didn't I hear back from you, right? So if you have experienced a situation like this, or know somebody who has, or if you're going through something like this right now, definitely you want to stay tuned into this video, this episode of my Crazy Corporate Chronicles, okay? And in these episodes, in this particular series, this is where I'm peeling back or pulling back the black curtains, and I'm letting you in as to, basically this is to, stories I'm sharing that I know you resonate with, that, is relevant to your situation. And if you have not been through something like this, you might know somebody who has, or maybe you one day will. And I want to talk about the lesson learned through all of this, right? In the end, but I want to kind of take you through the journey, because listen, I can't make this stuff up. This really and truly happens to me. Like, I've had so many scenarios in the 30 years of the tenure of my career in corporate America that it would just be insane not to share, with you exactly like what I went through, so that if you are going through something similar, or if you ever run up against a certain, situation like I have, like the scenarios that I share, or you find yourself in some crazy predicament that you didn't even know was a thing, then at least you will have heard it from me, right? And I am going to share with you what I did and what you could potentially do, because girl, it's crazy. Now, if it gets hot, I might have to, run my car and turn on some air, but for now, because it's warmer out here than I thought, and then I have the nerve to have on black, but I am representing, okay, Black History Month, and I'm not going to get into all of that right now. I'm going to actually do a live stream shortly, so you'll be sure to catch that, but I'll talk about Black History Month at that time, but I digress. Now, this company, almost said the name, this company was looking for someone to do some case management work. They were looking for someone to become, be a part of their utilization team. It was a very unique role. I tend to not only go for, at the time anyways, when I was in the workforce, traditional, roles, but non-traditional roles. And by that, I mean, because I am a nurse, I'm a registered nurse, right? Have been for 25 years and counting. And so I've had both traditional and non-traditional nursing roles in the healthcare arena. So this was one of those kinds of, roles that wasn't, necessarily something that was just out there readily available and accessible to everyone. But I happened to be someone who had the skill set, the talent, the background, the experience, the level of expertise that they needed. So I went in confidently knowing that, hey, just let me get my foot in the door, as far as like, let me get the interview. And once I land the interview, you're definitely going to hire me. Now, that's not cocky. That's confidence, right? I'm not arrogant in any way. It's just the way it is. I know that I'm great at sales. I'm great at selling my skill set and my talent and my abilities. And so I know this is like what it is for me. When I get the opportunity to talk to the hiring department, the hiring manager, then I'm in. That's the way it's just always been, right? And I have the CV, or the curriculum vitae. My resume is pretty extensive. It's varied. I have a diverse background. I've done all the things in this length of time. And so I have no concerns usually that I'm not going to be the one for the job. I'm always doing a two-way interview, by the way, because I want to know, look, is this a good fit for me as well? I'm not just, waiting for them to tell me if I'm a good for them. Are you good for me? You know what I mean? So, and I was saying that this is where I'm pulling back the black curtains to like reveal and disclose like what is really going down in the background of some of these corporations, right? These high-rise buildings, these proverbial glass ceilings, like in these boardrooms, like what is really going on in leadership? Because there is a poor quality of leadership these days. And like I said, it has just gotten worse over the years, and it has turned out to be the corporate circus at this point in time. So this company, I go in for an interview. They happily called me. They couldn't wait to get me in. When can you come in? I scheduled a time to go meet with them for the first interview that week. I go in, and the person who is actually the hiring manager, the manager of the department, wasn't there that day. Now, why would they schedule me on a day that the hiring manager is not there? Like, that was already should have been a red flag. But it turns out that I guess he had some sort of, unseen circumstance, some situation arise. He couldn't, he wasn't able to be there for whatever the reasons were. And I was like, okay, excusable. So I met with the hiring director, so his boss, okay? Now, when I met with her, she reassured me that, look, you'll be meeting with him. He's not here today, but I'll reschedule you to come back. But I have the last say. Now, that might have been a little cocky on her part. That was very much ego, right? As I since learned, after the fact. Because even though she had the last say, technically, and I get it because she's his boss, but he's the one who would be, hiring me, and he'd have to like me, trust that I could do the job that I say, deliver on my promise, basically, right? Not just look good on paper, but I can actually do what I say I can do. He has to be the one at the end of the day. He's going to work directly with me. So this guy is going to be the hiring manager, would more than likely have a lot of influence as to whether or not he would want me on board. So I get called back. We hit it off, this lady and I, who was the director. We hit it off right away. She was like, I like you. You're the one. We haven't found anyone like you. Your skill set, your background is impressive. I hear that all the time. I was like, great. When do you want to set, arrange a date and time for me to come back? So we did. I came back. I met him. He liked me. He was like, this is great. I can't wait to have you back to meet the team. So let's do a panel interview. We really been looking for somebody with your skill set, your education, your background. You have a very unique abilities. I love that. So we're going to call you back and you're going to meet the team that you'd be working with. Come back to meet the team. This is all within, days apart, a couple weeks apart, right? But over a month span of time. So the next time I come in, I'm meeting the team. They're asking me questions. I'm handling that interview like a champ. They're asking me questions back to back to back. I'm boom, boom, boom. They're like, okay, we like that. Oh, never heard of that. Oh, that's perfect. Well said. Well received. We love it. Okay, great. Now I'm a good energy reader. Okay. So I knew that some of the people in the room, you're always going to have at least one bad apple, right? You can always sense the one who is envious, who's already admiring you, but that admiration will turn into jealousy and envy, right? They will, you can just tell, I can feel the stench in that room of the microaggressions that existed, the intimidation, the people or person who would acknowledge me, or the ones who did and the ones who didn't, right? I can feel the look, the stares up and down, like, she thinks she's all that. This is not new to me. I get this from women all the time. In fact, I don't typically like working in an environment where there's a lot of women for that very reason. Just a lot of cattiness, a lot of chit chatter, a lot of negative energy, right? A lot of bitter Bettys, a lot of, negative Nancys, a lot of Debbie Downers, just a lot of people who make the work environment very toxic and hostile. So I already sensed those people. I already pulled them. I could tell the way they asked the questions, the way they looked at me when they asked the questions, the kind of rolling of the eyes, the like nonchalant ways. I saw it. I felt it. But nonetheless, I still did my thing, because I'm not, when I want what I want, I'm going to go after it, and I'm not going to let one bad apple spoil the bunch, right? I'm not going to let them affect me. But, God always has the bigger plan. He knows, right? Sometimes he's prepping you. He's grooming you. He's putting you in these situations for a reason. And we may not know what it is in the moment, right? In the midst of it. But I always say, and you've probably heard this saying, this is not something I've made up, actually. It is a cliche that man's rejection is God's protection. And so anytime, I used to be really disappointed when in the end I didn't get the job that I really wanted, it wasn't too many times that happened, but there were some occasions. And then I realized after the fact, it was meant to be that way. So this was one of those situations. And so I then came back for a fourth interview. And now I'm meeting the other managers that I'd be working with, and supervisors and leads of the department that I'd be overseeing. And so I've gone through I'm on the fourth round now. Now I'm like, yes, I am definitely in. By the third round, I was pretty sure. By the second round, I was pretty sure. And I'm really confident now. So the manager says, everybody loves you. You're hitting it off. You're doing great. You know what? Would you mind coming back and doing a presentation for us? And I said, sure. He said, how much time do you need? Now I told him, why don't, definitely give me, I said, I'm great at putting, together a presentation. I do it all the time. How extensive does it need to be? What does it need to be about? Who's the audience I'm speaking to? All the right questions. And then, we were supposed to push it out for a week, but he was like, can you do it in 2 days? So I'm thinking, okay, he wants to expedite this process. He really wants me in like now, right? So, okay, no problem. That was a little bit of pressure, but I did it. Girl, when I tell you I came back so prepared. The only thing, now this was so weird. Okay, so I come back. I'm expecting this is just going to seal the deal. There's a room full of people of managers, directors, employees, leads, supervisors, everybody. I think a couple of vendors and a stakeholder or two were even there. No problem. I'm used to speaking in front of large groups, small groups. I'm used to speaking to the C-suite executives, stakeholders, vendors, It doesn't matter. Employees, small, big, large teams, small teams, I'm good. So I killed it, okay? That presentation was on point, okay? If I do say so myself. But I was getting just ridiculous questions about, first of all, I was walking around the room, I was looking the part, I spoke articulately, I expressed, everything. The presentation was beautifully done. Like, I killed it, okay? And then you can see the people who was very standoffish. They didn't want to engage. Those are the very people I went to. I went in front of their face. I got in front of them like, so let me ask you this. And how do you feel about that? Like, I was trying to get them involved, and you can just tell they were not here for it, honey. Okay. So the guy who was the hiring manager was like, before I got started, which was so weird, he was like, okay, did you bring a lapel mic? I was like, no, I figured we'd be in a room about this size. I couldn't imagine that I would need a lapel mic for that. My voice projects nicely. Like, I project my voice. I'm not a timid, shy speaker, He was like, okay, do you want to borrow mine? I says, oh no, I don't need a lapel mic. He says, yeah, I'm going to have you borrow mine so we can make sure everybody can hear you. I'm thinking it's literally just one row of people. I think one or two people sat in the back intentionally, but they didn't have to. Okay, fine. Then he says, did you bring a pointer? Basically to change the slides, to advance the slides. I says, no, I figured I'd be at a podium. And I just manually advance the slides, and then I just interact with the crowd. He found that to be, like, he was getting perturbed. Like, he felt like, you can sense that he felt like I didn't come prepared. But dude, you didn't tell me I needed any of these things. You didn't share with me. I mean, it's not like we're in an auditorium size room. What's the deal? You know what I mean? I didn't get it. Okay. Then he goes on to ask me when I bring up the slide presentation, oh, who put the slide presentation together? And I was like, what a weird question. What do you mean who put it together? I did. We talked about what? So I put it together. He was like, no, I understand you put the presentation together, but who's this brand? And I was like, what do you mean, who's the brand? So what he was meaning is, who made the template? Who literally designed the template? And I read the brand name to him that was on the template. And he says, well, who's that? Is somebody you know personally? I said, no, this is the template that it came with as a PowerPoint presentation. Like, what are we talking about here? Literally the weirdest questions. I've never been asked anything like that. So he says, he's kind of like, you can see his jaw clenching. And I'm like, what the F? You know what I mean? So, well, why did you choose this particular template with the buildings and the sunrise? I'm like, what? Am I interviewing for a role that is going to require me to design the slides, the slide deck, the presentation? Because as far as I'm concerned, all you told me this position entailed for the most part was case management work, utilization review, some project management work in that, right? And also that I was going to be not designing. What was the word he used? He never used the word design. He said something to the effect of, like, we're putting together as a part of the project work that we're doing, various presentations and such. Anyways, it was never what he was, the questions he asked me didn't coincide with what the job entailed. So, So I tried to just let that go, because now that was bothersome, right? Because I'm now thinking, why is he asking me all of these questions that has nothing to do with nothing? So you can see people kind of smirking and talking amongst themselves. And so I called them out. I was like, I said, I can pause right here if you had questions. Yeah, like, two could play that game. I know how to handle my crowd, okay? If you have something to say, speak up. Let us all know. Because I knew that they were, giggling and chuckling and being, spiteful and mean-spirited, saying something specifically about me, like, I don't know what I'm doing. So it was just bad vibes, right? And at this point, I'm like, you know what? I really don't know if this is really the place for me. But I kept it moving. In my mind, I felt like the guy had the last say, the hiring manager. I'm literally at the end of my presentation, and before I can complete it, he hops up and he says, that's all. I'm asking questions. We're having a back and forth dialogue, me and the crowd of people. I'm allowing them to ask questions. They're asking great questions. I'm giving the great answers. He hops up and he says, I've got my decision made. That's it. That's all I needed to see. I was like, perfect, great. So I go down, I gather my stuff. We go down to the elevator. We hardly said a couple of words to each other, but he was like, so I started asking questions because I'm like, why are we having a silent moment here? And he basically was like, shake hands and we'll be in touch. And that in touch never happened. He literally never got in touch. The rudeness, the disrespect of it all. You know what I mean? So needless to say, I had to follow up, kept following up, never heard back, and finally got in touch with somebody in HR. They sent an email, I guess, over to that hiring department, and then I get an email after a whole month of this, just for them to tell me we went with another candidate. I'll be damned. So I just needed you to hear that these companies are just rude as hell. They do not have your best interest at heart, and you've got to advocate for yourself, and you've just got to know to ask more questions, because they're not always loyal, and they're not always on the up and up, and they're not always going to tell you. I'm starting to sweat in here now, so I'm going to wrap this up and put on my air, but I don't want the AC to be too loud. So let me just say, the lesson is that just don't fall for the okie doke, really. Ask more questions, be more involved. This is a two-way street. You get to choose them as much as they get to choose you. And if you start to go through that many rounds of interviews, by the time you get to the second and third one, you need to start asking more questions so that you know what other applicants or qualified candidates you're up against, if they're looking at internal candidates as well as external candidates. Like, are they leaning towards hiring you? Are you the most qualified? What does your competition look like? Ask the questions. Don't be afraid. I guess that's the biggest takeaway I want you to walk away with from this today, because you are deserving of more, and don't be down on yourself. Don't think this has anything to do with you. This is just the way these corporations are set up, and they're not fair. They're not right. They're not just. Okay. But that is why you've got to start getting more involved, and don't let them get away with that crap, because it's wrong. Okay. But anyway, I hope you were not only entertained by this story today, but really got the bigger lesson in this. And if you are experiencing anything like this before, don't let these companies gaslight you. Don't let them play you. Don't let them game you. Make sure, and then call it to the attention, like right into their corporate office, their corporate, the headquartered office. Like, seriously, write in and say what your experience is, share what that was for you, and let them know you don't appreciate their hiring process and how they strung you along over a month of time that you could have been looking elsewhere for other positions and putting your time, energy, and efforts into that, and protecting your peace of mind, preserving your energy, and not wasting your time. Okay, let them know I don't appreciate that. I don't appreciate being strung along like a puppet when all along they had no real intention of hiring me. And then they didn't even have the common decency to let me know they didn't hire me, and they ghosted me. So that's all I really have to say today. If you enjoyed this episode and you want more content like this, please do subscribe. Make sure you hit the notification bell so you don't miss a single episode, and let me know in the comments if you've experienced anything like this before. I'm going to tune out while you tune in, and be sure to watch the next video that YouTube recommends, okay? As always, and until next time, I am wholeheartedly in this journey with you. Bye for now.